Hi everyone, it's Steph here from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and for anyone who's very familiar with the series, welcome back. I know that there are quite a few new subscribers here, so welcome, and I hope that you enjoy the content. This is my reading week from the 15th until the 21st of November. I read a total of 6 books this week, 2,037 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 365 books. The first book that I finished reading this week was Contest by Matthew Reilly. This was a buddy read that I was doing with Beck from Beck Will Panda, and I will leave a link to her channel down below. It was a 2001 release that I gave 4 out of 5 stars this time. I do actually really love this series, and I had previously given it 5 stars, although I think reading it with hindsight and thinking about everything that's going on in the world at the moment, I'm being realistic, but do know that I adore this book with all my heart. Although I know it is problematic. It is the story of Stephen Swain, who is a doctor who works in a hospital and generally lives his life. He is a single dad raising his young daughter, and then one night he finds himself teleported inside the New York Public Library. What he discovers there is that he has been entered into a fight to the death competition called the Presidian, and this book is basically like the Hunger Games with aliens in a library. And it's delightful. The next book that I read this week was To My Country by Ben Lawson. This was a review copy sent to me by Erin and Unwin. It is a 2020 release. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Ben Lawson is an Australian actor, and this was a poem that he wrote at the beginning of the year when we were experiencing the bushfires here in Australia and living so far away from home. He wrote this as a tribute to his country, watching it while it was in flames. I will try to remember to leave a link to his Instagram story where he actually reads this poem out loud. It is fantastic, and it's lovely that it's been turned into a book, and all the royalties from this book will be donated to the Koala Hospital, which I think is fantastic. So this is just his poem in book form, illustrated by Bruce Watley, who is an incredibly talented Australian illustrator, and I've talked about him when I've reviewed picture books on my channel before, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's one of those books that I think is well worth having and remembering, because even though Australians like to travel, although granted that has not happened much this year, there is a very strong connection to our country, and I think this is a good reminder of that. This book will be released on December the 1st. Then I read Natural Disaster by Erin McLellan. This is the first book in the Storm Chasers series. It was a 2019 release. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This was a book that Kirsty found and shared a link to, and I immediately downloaded it because it basically sounded like the film Twister, which I might have had a mildly unhealthy obsession with when I was younger. It is the story of Guthrie Gale, who is a human interest reporter in Oklahoma. He is also the son of a storm chaser who has a very famous TV show, only his father is a bit of an arse. As a result of his relationship with his father, Guthrie wants nothing to do with storm chasing. However, this year they are short on reporters who actually go out and cover the storms, and so he's paired with the recently hired Luke Masters, who is a Los Angeles transplant and is desperate to make a name for himself and loves the thrill of storm chasing. So you have this very reluctant partnership, and when the Oklahoma storm season picks up, they have to learn how to deal with one another. They range from bickering to flirting, and it is utterly delightful. It honestly gave me Twister vibes, and I really want to go back and rewatch that film now because of this book. I also reread The Survivors by Jane Harper. This was her 2020 release. It is an Australian crime book. I've given it 4.5 out of 5 stars on reread. I was rereading it for my works book club, which we're talking about in about a week's time. It is the story of Kieran Elliott, who fled his small Tasmanian coastal hometown after one mistake in his late teens cost the life of his brother and another man in the town. Still haunted by that guilt, he returns home to help his parents move. His father has dementia and is being moved into a home, and his mother is moving to be closer to her husband. But things are really tricky because there's a lot of unresolved tension between Kieran and his parents. He's also come home with his partner and his 6-month-old daughter. And to complicate things even more, within a few days of coming home, a young girl washes up on the beach dead. And an investigation into her death begins to reveal things that happened way back when he was a teenager. And that the guilt that he still has over all the events that occurred may actually be based on something that didn't happen quite the way that he thinks it did. It's very atmospheric. I love things set in coastal towns because there's just something about that atmosphere. I mean, Jane Harper writes atmosphere not like nobody's business. And while I don't think it probably lives up to The Dry and The Lost Man, it's still a really good read. So I'm going to be looking forward to talking about this at book club. I also read Something Like This by Carly Lane. This is a 2020 release that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I did receive a review copy from Alan and Unwin. This also comes out on the 1st of December. Is Carly Lane's new book. You guys know that I adore her books. They are just those books that I can read in an afternoon that let me enjoy the reading experience. They're not too tense, they're not too sappy, they are just books that take me to a different place and I enjoy them. This book is about Jason Weaver, who is an ex-army serviceman who was injured and lost part of one leg, and so he's left the service. He's tried to rebuild his life. He's become a builder by trade, and he moves to a small country town in the hope to have some anonymity and to just be by himself. He's been through his fair share of tragedy, from the death of his mother and to his partner leaving him, and he just wants to be left alone. And this is all upended when he inadvertently goes into the town's cafe and crosses paths with Tilly Hollis, who works multiple jobs in order to achieve her dream, which is to run an equine therapy program. It was a dream of her and her husband. Her husband was a police officer who was killed in the line of duty. She has also recently lost her mother, and so she's in a place where she just wants to pursue this dream. She wants to make it happen because it was something that she and her husband were planning for so long. Tilly is obsessed with her horses. She loves them, and she rescues Guy Fawkes horses, which are the wild horses, or brumbies here in Australia, that are captured and then rehomed, and she wants to use them in her program. So part of this book is Jason and Tilly's relationship. It's not easy because Jason is quite abrupt and very unwilling to sort of bend in a lot of ways, and Tilly is also very determined to run her program. She's independent and she doesn't need people telling her what to do, but equally it is as much about the horses in the story. And I'm not much of a horse person, so a lot of that tends to go over my head, but the story was beautifully told, and it's quite clear that Carly Lane herself has a passion for these horses. It was a fun afternoon read. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself. I always enjoy her books, and I'm glad that I read it. And then finally I read an anthology, Duke I'd Like to F, by Sierra Simone, Nicola Davidson, Eva Lee, Adriana Herrera, and Joanna Shoup. This is a recent 2020 release. It is an anthology of historical romances featuring dukes. There are 5 stories in total. I really enjoyed the collection. I gave the collection itself 5 out of 5 stars. A really quick summary. My favorite story was Sierra Simone's The Chasing of Eleanor Vale, which shouldn't be surprising. I love Sierra's writing style. I just like how she creates an atmosphere almost automatically. It's always very tense. And I quite like that in her romances. Sorry, I meant to say The Chasing of Eleanor Vane. So this story is about Eleanor Vane, who is a very upright, moral-standing young woman who does everything for everyone else, and because of that she has been engaged to a future duke who is a bit of a social problem. She was selected by his uncle because he believes that having such a solid young woman will help tame his nephew. However, things don't quite go to plan because both Eleanor and Ajax, the Duke, or the uncle of her fiance, begin to have feelings for one another, and it is an age gap romance. It is delightfully dark and I loved it. Duke for Hire by Nicola Davidson follows Ada Blair and Jasper, the Duke of Gilroy, who enter into a contract where he will teach her the art of pleasure for a set period of time with no strings attached, and this was utterly delightful. This was probably my second favourite in the collection, and I also really liked how Ada had these 2 older women friends who were companions, and everyone sort of knew about it but no one batted an eyelid about it, and it was great. An Education in Pleasure by Eva Lee is the first Eva Lee book that I've ever read, and I will definitely be going back to read some more of her books. Again, this is an age gap romance, but this time it is the older woman in the story, and she's the governess to the young Duke of Tarrington's younger sisters. She was never his governess. I think he first met her when he was 16. However, now he's, I think, early 20s, and he's returned home because his father passed away suddenly, and the two begin a bit of an affair. And this one was a lot of fun as well. The Duke Makes Me Feel by Adriana Herrera. I'm not going to say it was my least favorite in the collection because I actually really liked the story, but it felt like it was the one that didn't fit with the tone of the rest of the stories in this collection. And it almost feels like it should have been fleshed out into a more full story in a way, which, like I said, it's not a bad story. It was actually a really fascinating story about Marina, who is a apothecary. She is biracial and she is fiercely independent. She wants to run her own business. She doesn't want people to be talking about her or to assume things about her because she is biracial. And then the Duke of Linley walks into her apothecary asking about a friend of hers who has gone missing after a bit of a scandal. It turns out that this friend of hers is the Duke's sister, and he enlists her help to track her down. And along the way, they begin to explore their attraction to one another, the complications that it would have were she to be either his mistress or his wife, and how they both need to admit their own true feelings. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. This one probably felt the most contemporary of all the stories in the collection, and also possibly the lightest, because the others all are a little bit darker. So that's the only reason why I say it doesn't necessarily fit in with the rest of the collection. And then My Dirty Duke by Joanna Shupe. I do love Joanna Shupe. I've only read her Gilded Age stories, so this was nice to read something a little bit different from her. It is the story of Violet, who is 18, and the Duke of Ravensthorpe, who is one of her father's best friends. So again, another age gap romance. And Violet has always harbored this crush on Ravensthorpe. And now that she is old enough, she decides to pursue him. And it has interesting outcomes, because Ravensthorpe is quite jaded and is very reluctant to consider marriage or long-term partners after the death of his first wife. All in all, I really like this collection. I've actually ordered a physical copy of it to go on my shelves because I enjoyed it that much. So those are all the books that I've read in the last 7 days. This week I'm completing my November Read Digital Challenge, so I will predominantly be reading off my Kindle. Stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on reading any of them in the future. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.